Hello everyone, this is Feedmaster Viktor Neustroev. Thank you for joining our workshop today. We are waiting for more people to join. Today we are going to talk about the king's pawn cover, how to take advantage of it, and of course how to weaken it in order to take advantage of the pawn cover being weakened and succeed with our attack. Fine. So we started a little earlier, so people are joining. That's why let's wait. Let's wait. What else I want you to remember? So you know that last week, this past week, I was doing several streams. So together with this workshop on Sunday, I added Title Tuesday on Tuesday. The stream is on Twitch and starts at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Eastern Daylight Time. It's 3 p.m. London time or 4 p.m. Central European Time. So if you can participate, you may watch it. I'm going to send emails, so once again to everyone, to remind you about this event. Last time I didn't play really well, but one of my games was really good. I'm working on a course on an Italian game, how to play it with white pieces, and that was an Italian game where I successfully defeated a 2600 player, which is good, of course. But usually I score something like 4 and 5 of 11, sometimes 5, sometimes 4. But anyway, it increases my blitz rating on chess.com, so I'm not a good blitz player. I'm trying to work on it. That's why I'm doing these tournaments regularly. So what else? There was a Title Tuesday on Tuesday, and there was another tournament. So let me share the whole screen. Here at Chesslands Club, we conducted a tournament where all participants could practice with how to play Count Sicilian. So I was playing myself. I got the first place, but it doesn't matter. It matters that all the games started from the Count Sicilian variation. For example, let me show you one of my games. Okay, let's say this game. So all games started from this position. This position, Count Sicilian variation. You have to play it for white, you have to play it for black. So this is the best way to practice the opening. Well, it would be great if you can then analyze them with a coach or at least send some games for me and ask if you played the opening properly, which mistakes you made, and so on. Next Thursday, we are going to work on other openings. So I didn't choose the one yet, but next Thursday, we are going to practice something else. And your task is actually to tell me which exact opening you want to practice. So all the games, well, this event is unrated because it starts from a certain position. And which opening would you like to practice? So many of my students play Count Sicilian with black pieces, and that's why they have to practice it a lot. Um, I actually, yeah, I actually should practice it too. Fine, but I play in Title Tuesday every Tuesday, so I have some practice there. What next opening would you like to work on? Okay, let's go back. So I'm going to announce it maybe on Wednesday. But to not miss it, I kindly recommend you to join this group. So, okay. Uh, okay, so let me. Okay, Rui Lopez on Nimza Indian. Okay, it doesn't work like it is a link. Okay, just join the club to not miss our future events. Now let me send you the link once again. It didn't send properly. So this is the link. And also here in the chat. So join this club, and we are going to work on, we are going to practice a new opening. This Thursday, I'm going to announce which on Wednesday. Okay, fine. So now let's talk about our main topic. Well, we are going to talk about king's pawn cover. And before we start the analysis of the games, let's talk a little about the pawn structures, about the pawn cover that we usually have. So, of course, I'm not talking about this in game. I'm talking about the middle game. I just removed all other pieces to say a few general words regarding the pawn structure. So this king's pawn cover, when the pawns are on the initial position, is considered to be the strongest one, the most solid one, because the pawns are flexible, and if, for example, they attack, you can push, or you can push like that to prevent any attack. So this pawn cover is not compromised yet, and that's why it is considered to be the most solid one. This one, when the h3 played, well, it's a little weaker, but still okay. What's wrong with it? Well, they can start maybe trying to exchange this pawn. Maybe there will be some bishop sacrifices on h3 or something like that. Or in case if they, let's say, bring the bishop to c7 and the queen on d6, they will be threatening with a checkmate on h2. And in order to defend it, you would have to play such moves like g6, g3, I mean. But g3 makes h3 a weakness. So that's why this is a little weaker. This one, yeah, but yeah, it's a good habit to create an escape square for the king. That's right. In case if the game passes to the middle game and there is a chance to blunder some combinations with a back rank mate. So look at this. When the h pawn takes on g3. So why every time when the exchange happens, for example, their knight captures our bishop, why we usually take with the h pawn? Well, because we do not expose the king a lot. We just expose the king a little. We only open the h file, and if this king is already castled and the rook is no longer on h8, it's on f8 or somewhere else, then there is almost no danger, because what they can do is knight g4 and queen somehow to the h file. But even this is not enough. Having the knight on f3 will stop this attack. So that's why it's still considered to be a solid pawn structure. This one, this is not as solid, but with the bishop being fianchetted, it seems to be okay. However, you should understand that this bishop can be exchanged. And if this bishop exchange, this pawn structure, this pawn cover looks really weak, because they can invade your territory and threaten checkmate on g2 using light squares. So queen and pawn, or queen and bishop. And usually, such a pawn becomes the object of the attack with the edge pawn. Well, yeah, so if there are no pieces that can attack light diagonals, then it's not a big issue. Yes, and if you want to create an escape square, but you don't know which pawn to push, take a look at the enemy bishops. If they have a dark squared bishop, then g3 makes more sense. If they have a light squared bishop, then h3, or if it's endgame with rooks, h4. Fine. And finally, this, when the f pawn moves, which opens this diagonal, is, well, much weaker. Why? Because the king can be attacked. So when the king on h1 is vulnerable to the back rank mate. Well, f3 or f4. However, you cannot judge of the position based on just king's pawn cover. You have to take into account a lot of factors, and not only how exposed your king is, how weak your pawn cover is, but how your opponent can exploit it. If you see that he cannot, then who cares about the pawn cover? Well, for example, one of my students, where is it? So here, um, here, he always says, well, they just checkmate me through the H file. Well, I say, how they can checkmate you if what you need is just to protect H2 square, which you can definitely do. So taking with the H pawn is completely fine here. Well, of course, if the H file is already open and they can use their queen and rook on that file, you are in trouble. But in this position, if the rook is already on f8, there is nothing to worry about. So, um, yeah, chess, well, I often say chess is a game of compromises, which means that you always have to compare how weak your pawn structure, your or enemy pawn structure is, and how you or your opponent can exploit it. If there is no way to exploit it, then who cares about the pawn cover? Fine. Let's now talk about our game examples. And this is the first one where your task is to take advantage of this weird pawn cover where tons of, where a lot of dark squares are open and you can take advantage of that. While you're thinking about the outcome with the white's attack, let me tell you something. So the attack on the enemy king is more successful if the pawn cover is weakened. If it's already weakened, it means that you need fewer resources to successfully finish your attack. That's why first it does make sense to provoke any weaknesses on the king side. So for example, use the h pawn, use some attacks with your pieces. And well, we will talk about it a little later. But first, let me tell you what compromising the king allows you to do. So first of all, you can deliver checks to the enemy king, you can attack it, you can gain tempi, and maybe you can find some forks that allow you to win material. Second, if the pawn cover was already compromised, it means that you can use certain squares to invade the enemy territory, like here, for example, queen h6 was played mainly because the g pawn moved. Third, um, well, you can attack squares which are weak around the king and create mating threats. For example, here it's obviously queen g7. Well, of course, they found a defense. They brought their knight to e8. However, it doesn't help. And sometimes you can just sacrifice material in order to provoke pawn weaknesses and your future invasion. And of course, weakened pawn cover allows you to come up with some tactical ideas. Okay, now let's take a look at your suggestions. So having a double pawns is always bad. No, it's not always bad. It's always bad only when the pawns are isolated and your opponent can exploit it. So if they are not isolated, most likely he doesn't really have a chance to take advantage of it. Sometimes, well, especially it happens. Now, let me create a new chapter. So let's say e4, e6, d4, d5. Let's say knight c3, knight f6. So you play this move, bishop e7. No, not here. So take, and then bishop e7. And sometimes they capture with the g pawn. What for? So the pawns are double, but they are not isolated. Well, it's a little disadvantage, but black is going to have the g file to attack your king. And this is the way they're going to compensate it. If, let's say, This exchange happened, and well, I don't know, somehow the pawns became isolated. Then, yes, it can be a trouble, especially if they are located on an open file and you can attack them directly. It, for example, happens in some Sicilian variations. So queen c7, knight c3, knight f6. So let's say bishop a3, bishop b4. Let's say bishop e2, take. The pawns are isolated on the open file, and black does a blockading strategy, and later in the game tries to take advantage of the weakness of these pawns. Okay, let's now go back to our example. Knight e7 followed by rook e6. No, knight e7, but not followed by rook e6. It works. Knight h4 to sacrifice on g6 seems to be too slow. So let me see. Knight h4 to sacrifice on g6. Well, actually, it does make sense, and I don't see how to defend the position. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe there is something. Maybe f6 just. There is knight g7 to cover the. So knight g6. Pawn takes, queen takes. No, it is a disaster. Okay, knight takes, rook f7. Yeah, looks like there is still a huge advantage. But knight h4 isn't the best move. What else? No other suggestions? Come on, guys. I thought well, you already calculated 97 and came up to the solution that it works. Okay, then suggest rook d5. Then can you specify what's the purpose of a rook d5 move? Okay, Arush. Yes, you are absolutely right. Thank you. Okay, and now I see that, okay, Tim on YouTube suggests 97 too with rook h5. Eric suggests h4, h5. Eric, I think it's slow. If there is a quicker win, why not to initiate it? So 97, definitely. What they can do? Well, they have to take, because if they decide to make a king move, it's queen f8 with it's over. So they have to take it. And once they take it, we do not play rook h5 immediately, because if so, it's f5 and h7 is protected. We instead play queen h7, sacrificing the queen and attracting the king to the h7 position. So we can take advantage of the pin of the pawn on g6 and deliver this check. So the king goes that way, which is the only move, and then rook h8 is checkmate. So this is a win. This is how it works. So once you see we have material advantage on the king side and the king's pawn structure is weakened, look for a tactical strike. So here, all these pieces are able to coordinate with each other. Moreover, if needed, there can be even a rook lift. So it should work really well. Fine. Okay, that was Rudolf Spielmann. Now his second game, where he was playing with white. What do you think? Looks like the pawn structure, the pawn's cover is again compromised. Can we take advantage of it? This one he was playing against Saveli Tartakova. Okay, while you're thinking, let me continue. So we were talking about which opportunities you get once the enemy king's pawn structure becomes weaker, becomes compromised. Now let's talk about how to actually make the enemy king's pawn cover weaker. Well, well, definitely you can attack on his pawns from the king's pawn cover with your pieces, for example, with bishop and queen, and it is likely to provoke a pawn movement. You can exchange your pawns. This is what I was explaining when I was telling you about the H pawn movements, which can be exchanged for the enemy pawn on G6. Of course, especially when you have a material advantage on the king side, you can sacrifice material sacrifice a piece for the one or two pawns and then continue the attack. And of course, you can create tactical ideas which would force your opponent to advance the pawns. For example, so I'm working on an Italian game, I told you. E4, E5, knight F3, knight C6, bishop C4, well, knight F6, D3, bishop C5, C3, D6, bishop G5. And this already forces H6. Sooner or later, H6 can be played. And very often, here, white still has to castle to the king side. Or they castle king side earlier, but in order to get rid of this pin, they have to play g5. And in some variations of Italian game, white is able to take advantage of these weaknesses. This is actually what happened in one of my games. Well, I can quickly show you. Okay, stop sharing. Once again, well, just a sec, I'm going to share it once again. So I just want to show you the game. Okay, please take a look at the screen. This is the game that I was talking about when in the Title Tuesday I defeated a 2600 player, so international master from Germany. Well, okay, start you. Let me just show you. So bishop g5 idea was played. Sooner or later, he has to play g5. Even the engine tells that g5 is a good move. Finally, g5 was played and he castled. Well, that was a mistake, actually. But why black usually castles there, so not in every line, but in some. So this, and I open the position. He tries to trap my bishop. I stop it. Well, not the best move. H3 was better, but anyway, I sacrifice the pawn. Not a big issue. Some inaccuracies were played. But at least my knight is able to join the place of action. And finally, okay, so here the engine thinks this is a mistake because there was a better move. But e5, in my opinion, looks very logical. I take on e5 and play this winning material. And later, I just took advantage of the h5 and g4 by doing this. And the rook left. Finally, I took there. Okay, rook e8 was a better move. And then h6 is coming. So h6 was played, knight e6, I took on e6, and then he resigned. What I want to say, so bishop g5 provokes h6 g5, and in case if they castle to the king side, these pawns, these pawn movements are likely to create weaknesses around the king, and you can take advantage of that. Fine, let's continue with our analysis. So, what do we have here? How would you suggest for white to play? Rook e4, rook g4 looks interesting. Rook e3, and then whatever. Okay, it's a previous one. Okay, rook e4, rook g4. Interesting. Queen d4 looks good to me. Brian, I think that you already studied this position. I mean, studied this game, but not from this position. Queen d4 should be winning. I think queen d4 is winning, yeah. In the game, it was played queen d2. Why? To occupy the h6 square. Well, queen d4 should be fine too. Queen g2 is good too. But then black wanted to exchange queens. They thought that white has to take. Otherwise, if white moves, it's a rook loss. But who cares? Once we occupy h6, we are threatening with g7, queen to g7, and there is no checkmate. I mean, there is no defense against this checkmate. That's why, well, black has to resign. What they did, they captured the rook with a check, but after bishop f1, well, they lost the game because the only way to avoid checkmate on g7 is queen e3, but this is a queen sacrifice. And of course, this position is completely winning. So, well, so g takes f6 was played early in the game that weakened h6 and allowed us to occupy the square to create mating threats. And even an attack of our rook, even with a check, didn't help black. Fine. Let's take a look at this position. So it's the end game. The what can we say? The queens are over. However, the king's pawn structure is well compromised. There is a G file, so the king is trapped on h8 for a while. We have a bishop pair, but black is going to exchange the light squared bishop. So what do you think we should do in this position? Well, because these pieces are not developed, there can be some back rank mating ideas. That's why, yes, it does make sense, exactly like John said, bishop, yes, and bishop e7 to threaten with bishop f6 mate. So bishop e7, and they cannot take it because then it's a back rank mate. So what do you think, how they have to react after bishop e7? What's the only way to play? 97, yeah, I think so. Well, h5, bishop f6, this is a losing position. So king goes to h7, then you can play bishop d3, king h6, and bishop g7 mate. So h5 doesn't work. So knight d7 defending f6 looks like the only way, but then it's rook takes d7. And this is still a threat. So for example, bishop takes bishop f6 mate. That's why rook e7 should be played. And now if rook takes e7 played, bishop takes c4. But white is winning because they have extra material. So they converted their advantage. Their advantage was that the black's position of the king was compromised. They took advantage of it and converted to the endgame with extra material. Rook b7 offers an easy win. So this is not doing much. The king successfully escapes. And rook e8 is a mating threat. Also, it's possible to play like that and exchange the rooks. For example, b5, take, check, and this pawn is lost. And there is nothing to discuss. The king goes to d4, and white is completely winning. So at the very least, they can sacrifice here. No, well, pawn takes, king takes, and there will be an extra outside passed pawn. We finished our previous group class, I mean, a course of group classes, and we are about to start the next one in the beginning of April, starting from the 4th of April. And this course is devoted to how to attack and defend. And the first lesson, I've already prepared content for the first few lessons. So the first lesson is devoted to the preconditions of the attack. So which all chess players should definitely learn. And for example, here, one of the preconditions that told us that we still may continue the attack of the enemy king, um, even in the endgame, is that fact that the king's position was compromised. So the pawn structure was ruined, and because we have a light square, dark squared bishop in this position, we can take advantage of it. This is how it works. So, by the way, if you're interested in this course, follow my announcements. Well, once our landing page is ready, I will send you the link and you will be able to enroll if you will, of course, want. Well, those students who attended it found our previous group lesson course very helpful. Well, if there is anybody, well, yeah, there are students, so you can, yeah, thanks, Dan. Yes, you can definitely confirm it. Yes, taking on e6 would fix the pawn structure. I'm not saying that it fully fixes the pawn structure because then e6 is a weakness. So even if that happened, e6 is still a problematic pawn. For example, it can be rook d6, rook e3, and how to defend. Advance, well, but then f6 is a weakness. Even after the exchange, black still experience issues, but they are one pawn up, so that's why maybe it's not a big issue. But bishop e7 provides white with a decisive advantage. Let's continue with our next example. So this time the pawn cover looks solid. It's not compromised yet, but we can say that, well, it's actually French defense, and we can say that four of white pieces are into the attack and may potentially create dangerous threats. What do you think? Which move white should start with? Okay, so here many of you suggest bishop h6. Bishop takes h6, and definitely this move deserves our analysis, but analysis first. You should make sure that it works before making it. So uh, while you are thinking, let me show you an example. This is an example of the game played by my student, Peter. Okay, let me add it here. Fine. Okay. Yeah. So let me show you an example. So he played the opening. Not he didn't do his very best, but it still was fine, and he did have advantage. And here he decided to take on h6. He decided to take on h6, but looks like he just didn't calculate it properly. This move is definitely possible. Because black pieces are not well coordinated and white has a material advantage on the king side. Well, even if it doesn't seem so, you can say that by looking how quickly white can bring his resources to the king side. So bishop h6 actually works, but this should be well calculated. Here, well, knight f6 fails. At least you have this move. Maybe you also have knight e4. Well, knight e4, no, but well, knight g5. Knight g5 seems to work because how do they play? If they play that way, you can continue with bishop h7. So knight takes, it's queen takes mate. If king goes that way, then you can play this move. Actually, no, you play this move and win the queen. Well, even if not the queen on d7, let's say queen to c7. So still bishop h7 makes sense. And then knight c4, like that. So trying to get rid of bishop d7, then bishop f5, and you liquidate this knight first. And then checkmate by exchanging the knight on f first by exchanging the knight on f6, you can checkmate. Fine. So, well, but f5 was played. And now the white is still better, but they have to create threat. They have to keep initiative. So he played knight e2. It's actually not a mistake, but this is where they should bring more pieces to the attack in order to succeed. So what I'm saying, yes, here intuitively bishop h6 worked, but you should well calculate it to sacrifice a piece, because sacrificing material is a very responsible action, and if you are not sure that it works, you better look for better moves. So according to the engine, before bishop h6 was played, where was it? So in this position, bishop h6 still favors white, but just making the position more solid could make sense, because what they can do, knight g5, no, knight d4, and this knight is not doing anything on g5. So just reinforcing the position and taking advantage of the enemy king's weakness, potential weakness, would be the proper plan for white. Okay, so here bishop h6. Let's talk about it. Bishop h6, g takes h6, queen takes h6. And what are we threatening in this position? Well, we are threatening with knight g5 at the very least. We are threatening with this move too, because it creates a discovered attack on the enemy queen. So that's why they play e5. What's the purpose of e5? To bring the bishop to the game, to play e4 also. Knight g5, right? Bishop h7 becomes a threat. So queen e7 was played. Now bishop h7 doesn't work so well. There is no piece to distract this knight from f6. Oh, by the way, those of you who watch this event on YouTube, can you please like this stream, because it helps to get more, it makes the stream more popular, and I'm likely to get more viewers, and well, more people can enjoy such a helpful educational content. Fine. So bishop h7. This time it doesn't work so well, because what else? There is no possible retreat. Yes, it's probably about a rook lift. Actually, maybe we should do a rook lift right away, rook a e1. This is exactly what happened in the game. So rook d8, and how would you play? Open the F file and liquidate. Well, but how you open the F file? Do you mean you have to play king h1? I'm not saying it doesn't work at all, but it seems quite slow. Okay, bishop h7, king h8, and rook e5. Clever. Or bishop h7 followed by rook e4? Possible too. Or rook e4 right away. Well, well, rook e4 right away, I think is a bit... No, it's still fine, because if they take, it's checkmate. Yeah, rook a4. What if they play bishop f5? This is kind of a problem. You can play rook h4, and then it works. Yeah, then it still works. So rook e4 was clever. Bishop h7. Okay, bishop h7, king h8, bishop g6, king g8, bishop f7. Okay, and then they have to sacrifice the queen, right? So bishop f7, queen takes, knight takes. King takes, it should be a winning position. Right, right. But instead, I think there was a good suggestion. Bishop h7, king h8, and rook e5. Right. But actually, you can start with rook e5. If now queen e5, then bishop h7, they still cannot take it, because after queen takes, king f8, queen f7 is mate. If they don't take, then bishop g6. King moves, and bishop f7 is checkmate. So that's why they cannot take it. And here they had to play rook takes d3, sacrificing their queen. And then the game was over. So there is nothing to discuss. Without a queen, there is nothing to fight for. It's because the black rook moves away from f8. But let's say what else they could do to... Well, bishop f5 is a blunder. Bishop e6, rook e5 immediately. Okay, let's make some neutral move like bishop d4, for example. What would you suggest? for white now. Still rook e3. Well, rook e4 probably, Brian. This is what you mean. No, rook a3, because you think that opening the f file is crucial. Well, what can I say? Actually, you're right too, but they probably won't take. They will maybe continue like that, and your rook h3 fails because of the bishop. So probably you mean rook g3, bishop f5, then some discovered attack, like what? Knight f7, king f7. Knight e4, let's say. Knight e4, e4, then bishop g6, and take, take. Then what? Well, if queen takes, it's queen g7. It looks to be okay for black. Not clear. So you did rook e3. If they take, you're winning. But you cannot move to h3, and moving to g3 maybe not sufficient because they can play e4. So e4, rook g3, and then bishop f5. Maybe. No, knight h7 still fail. Okay, so let's say bishop d4. We have to play rook e4 and rook h4 because this is a deadly threat. And if they play bishop f5 in this position, rook h4 works. Why does it work? Because they have no time for e4, and queen h4 is a threat. So they have to block on h7 with something, but then we have too many pieces attacking it. Fine. So, well, rook d8. Rook d8 was played in the game and lost. Okay, maybe let's say this rook a4 was played, and instead it can be something else. Like, well, it's hard to suggest. This. No, it's over. There is nothing to discuss anymore. Okay, so this is what happened in the game, and White successfully realized their advantage. Wanna see how? Let me just quickly show. So attacking there, bishop d8. So the bishop has to protect the knight. Knight e4, simplifying, bishop g6, and h3. Well, to let the king to escape if needed. Then h4 to chase the bishop away. Finally, the bishop is forced to move away, and it's completely winning. Fine, let's continue with our next example. So, well, this is a little hard. It's white to move. What do you think white should do? Yeah, that was Rashid Nejmedinov. What do you think? Well, knight h6 seems to be tempting, right? But, well, they definitely take. Right now, the material is equal. A queen sacrifice. Okay, so what can I say, guys? You shouldn't be looking for a tactical strike. Why so? I mean, you shouldn't be looking for a queen sacrifice, for example. Why so? You have material advantage here. Doesn't matter whether it's Rashid Najmedinov or Mikhail Tal. Why you think it should be queen sacrifice? How this position tells you that? Because when you play the game, you cannot say, oh, this position that I have in the game right now looks similar to one of the games that Mikhail Tal played. So let me sacrifice like Mikhail Tal did. But everything is based on nuances when it comes to tactics. So no, just knowing the name of the player, you cannot say that it should be obligatory queen sacrifice. Instead, you should evaluate what's going on. First of all, you have a lot of pieces on the king side, And ruining the enemy pawn structure could make sense. But if you do it with a queen, you don't have material to checkmate then. Who checkmates if not your queen? Well, no material advantage at the moment, but I'm talking about material advantage on the king side. So these pieces are attacking and black is defending with these pieces only. So the queen doesn't really participate in the defense. When the knight moves, it is possible to bring the rook or the queen to g6. But at the moment, no. So I'm talking about uh, short-term material advantage on the king side. So which means that white simply has more pieces involved into the king side play rather than black at the moment. Okay, what your options are? Knight d4. Knight d4, which knight to d4? So probably this one, because the one on f5 is well placed. Okay, it does deserve attention. Knight d4. Yes, start with knight d4. I'm looking for. Okay. Queen g3. Queen g3, threatening there and threatening there. But knight h5. Queen g4, queen g6. So it seems to not work. Yeah, let me show you. So queen g3, knight h5. So you don't have this. You don't have that. It's protected. You have to move the queen. So there. But then they defend with queen g6 and it looks okay. At least they don't lose the game. So looks like queen g3 was a mistake. Knight d4 is a helpful move. But if you play knight d4, let's say they move the queen there, what then? So maybe e5? Well, maybe. So knight d4 is a generally speaking helpful move, but how is it related to the king's pawn cover? Rook d1 first. Well, don't forget that there is a problem here. So, and instead of queen d7, they also have queen to c8. Knight h7. So, well, this is interesting, but what to play then? For example, you decide to play knight d4 and regroup your knight to a5 to capture on h6. So bishop blocks. Maybe white is not losing, but well, I see only a perpetual check. Moreover, if white is lucky, so maybe rook e3, but king h7, and now h6 is not. It's not under attack. Maybe then take on h6 first. Bishop h6, queen h6. Let's say knight d7. So the rook is protected and rook g6 is coming. So knight d7 looks good. And black defended. So it's not knight h6. Do you have any other suggestions? Okay, let me tell this. Why don't you want to capture h6 with queen after? Yes, I want to, but are you sure it works? Then what? So here I played knight f5. But do you want me to capture with a queen? I still think it can be this. With rook g6, cementing the position. g4 is risky. I agree. So, well, knight h6 looks like a nice sacrifice. And if this knight went to f5, that could work. It's better to play knight d4 rather than knight h4 because knight 3 to d4 gains a tempo. So actually, this move is good, but white played better. They took on g7, and black cannot ignore it because this is a fork. So what black has to do? Take, right? But we attracted the king, and now once our knight comes to f5, this is not just an attack of the h6 pawn, but a check too. So this is an easy win then. Knight d4, knight f5. Can they play queen d6? No, knight f5. So they have to move their queen to d7 or to f to c8. For example, c8. Knight f5. What happens then? Mate in three. Mate. Oh well. Yes, I think it's either mate in three or you win material. So, for example, King G8 is the best move, but this is a blunder. This is a blunder too. Checkmate in two. Well, King H8 do not deserve our attention. It's the same story, and King F8 also the same story with Queen G7. So King G8 is the only move. Now capturing there allows them to play at least Bishop F8 and cover the G7. That's why we should continue with Queen G3, delivering this check and threatening with Queen G7 once the king moves. That's why in order to defend, they have to play this, sacrificing a piece back. Queen takes and rook, well, bishop g5, yeah, it's possible, and rook g6. Or bishop g5. Let's say bishop g5. What do you think? How you can play in this position? I want you to find a move that defeats black and they have to resign then. Well, h4, well, probably they won't resign then. They would probably continue with rook g6. Knight h6, rook h6. Queen g5, rook g6. So knight h6 doesn't work. You only win a pawn. Okay, thanks, John. It's knight e7. It's overloading. Look at this brilliant move. The bishop is pinned. The rook may take, but it no longer protects the queen. So knight e7 was a fork, and that's why they resigned. They actually resigned after queen g4. In case of this move, it's basically the same. But this time, once the king moves, you can capture here with a queen. And then play this in game with extra rook and extra knight. So why didn't you come up with this idea of sacrificing the knight on g7, not on h6? Well, let me answer this question. So first of all, you are get used to knight h6. Why? Because well, when you sacrifice the knight, you are likely to get two pawns. So queen takes and then continue the attack. And this knight typically goes to g5. But in this position, after capturing either this or this, you would love to have the knight already on e5. And it's possible to achieve once you play this move. Okay, so because you calculate checks first. Yeah, but you should calculate whether knight h6 works or not. And it seems it doesn't. And knight g7 is a better move than knight h6 because it attracts the king. And now once you get to f5, it is a check and you can continue your attack in a more forcing way. So a sacrifice on g7 deserves attention too. Do not forget about it. Let's talk about this position. So if before we were talking about how if before we were talking of how to take advantage of the enemy pawn structure being compromised, let's talk of how to compromise this pawn structure and then take advantage of it. What do you think? White to move? Well, I would say white is a little better because of the center, because of better pieces activity, but at the same time, black doesn't really have any serious problems except one. Okay, well, I'm pretty surprised, guys. So you see the Greek gift idea, but does this Greek gift idea work? So e5, right? e5 should be played, and this is where they have to move the knight. They decided to move the knight to d7 to attack. It wasn't the best move. And then bishop h7. Yeah, bishop h7 is the move that you should analyze first. It should work. Well, Brian, it should work not because I'm showing it on this workshop. It should work because there are some preconditions met. For example, what are they? That you can play knight g5 and queen h5 if he goes to g8. And if he goes to g6 instead, after, well, bishop h7, king h7, then he goes to knight g5, then he goes to g6. And then the king is still vulnerable and you can take advantage of it. And yes, this pawn on e5 is a very crucial move, which allows us to obtain material advantage on the king side. By chasing this knight away, we decrease the number of defenders. So basically, there are just two pawns defending the king, which we can definitely take advantage of. So yeah, but before making this move, you should calculate. Here it works. How does it work? King h7, knight g5. Well, if this move, queen h5, threatening with checkmate, the only way to not get checkmate first is to, well, there is a sacrifice of the bishop, but then it's a losing position and there is nothing to discuss. There is rook e8 move. What do you think? After rook e8, how do you win here? Because if you start with queen h7, king f8, queen h8, the king escapes. So what do you think? We also had a webinar devoted to a Greek gift sacrifice. So if you well remember, then you will definitely tell me. Okay, so Preful and Arrow suggest, and Isabella suggests queen takes f7. That's right. Um, yeah. Preful, can you please tell me what's your rating? Either at chess.com or any national rating? Yes, it's queen f7. How does it work? It works similar to this. So here, the main problem is that once you take on g7, there is the f7 pawn that stops a check, and they try to hold it by defending. Okay, perfect. And which country are you from, if it's not a secret? So queen f7 makes more sense. We liquidate this pawn first, and after the king moves, now we can succeed with our original idea because the f7 pawn was liquidated. That's right. So now the king cannot escape. Even if he could, then we could add pressure with some rook moves. So, but, well, it doesn't make sense to bring the king there. Well, at least because of knight f7 and knight d8, which is a discovery check. And it doesn't make sense to play this move because queen h5, queen h7 mate right away. So king g6 is the most problematic move for us. Tell me, please, what your candidates here are. So I saw h4. Yes, I only saw h4. What else? I'm not sure if h4 is the best. Queen g4, right. And the third move? And queen d3 also. Yeah, queen d3. Thanks. So let's choose the best one among them. And there is something else I wanted to say also. Let me see. Brian wants to play white king h1. Brian, can you please specify why king h1? Why you think this white move is good idea? Well, and please do not forget that this is not a blitz game. So this is a standard game. If you play something wrong, your opponent is likely to bring defensive resources. So to push the f pawn. Okay, so let's talk. It's crucial actually. King h1. Well, how does he play? No, well, let's say he plays maybe this move. He threatens to take f4. He takes. Well, f5 makes no sense. F takes g4. Yes, it works, but then he escapes back to g8, to the safe place. Exactly. So thanks, Isabella. We sacrifice a piece and we have to hurry with dynamic approach and cannot play normal move. So yes, as we usually do when we play positionally, when we can call it aesthetic approach. So yes, we have, once we sacrifice the piece, we cannot play slowly. We have to create threats. Otherwise, they will punish us for these material losses. Fine. So that's why these are the moves, because all of them create threats. Well, h4 works really well when there is a rook there. I'm not sure that it works in this position, but you can combine it with other ideas. I'm definitely 100% against this. Why? Because of knight e5, and there is no such a discovered attack. So the queen moves, and at the very least, they can maybe they can play queen d5, just this, and sacrifice material back with queen d5. Well, there is also an idea of bishop f2, but let's talk about it later. So queen g4, definitely not, because there is knight e5. h4, maybe. For example, if rook h8 is played, it's queen c2 or queen d3, and after f5, take. It's a discovered attack, so the king takes, and just rook e1. So you see, it seems that we're playing slowly, but with every move we create a threat. h4 had a threat of h5, queen delivered the check, and Passan was also a check, and rook e1 threatens e6 with mate. So all moves are played with threats. And after that, I think we just win a piece back if they don't take, and if they take, then we can do this. So our queen is hanging. Let's not forget about it. So here, well, check bishop d5 again. So just take on e4. And if they block, we take the bishop. If they move, we increase pressure, and maybe we threaten with this move. So queen c7, let's say, queen c4, king d6, and after rook d1, it should be game over. Okay, good point. So actually, this and this works. Bishop d5, queen h3 works, and then we can take the queen. They have three minor pieces for the queen, so it actually should be fine. We are one pawn up. It should be fine, but rook a4 seems to be better. Okay, good. So h4 could make sense. Queen d3 deserves attention too. Why? Because their only defense is f5. If they play something like that, it's game over. Or the other way. So f5 is a must. En passant doesn't work so well. How can we play then? Rook a6, adding pressure, but bishop d5. Knight h7, winning exchange. Well, let's talk about this move, because very often I see that when a chess player cannot find how exactly he may continue this attack, he wins exchange and thinks that this is enough. But well, knight or bishop takes. I don't see. I don't think this is a favorable position for white anymore. So two minor pieces versus rook and pawn, and the king is not actually safe because weak, because white doesn't have pieces to attack. So how to continue? En passant makes no sense. Queen g3, and we are still threatening with a discovered attack. And f4 means bishop takes f4. And after rook takes, it's knight e6, not queen takes f4. So let me show you. So this, and if they take, we don't take that because it's queen g5. We take that, and then depends on the game. We either take on d8 or on f4, or actually both. Fine. So queen e7 was played. They are trying to protect, and they actually mainly avoiding the attack of their queen. So locating the queen at the distance of one square diagonally from the knight is unlikely to lead to any knight attacks. What then? What do you think? So accurate, yeah, magic distance. Accurate play is required from white. What do you think we should do? So bishop f4, actually, yes, bishop f4. It stops f4. It allows us to bring more resources because the king cannot escape. And that tells us that playing a little slower still is okay. h4, h5. Well, h4 is always rook h8, and then we cannot succeed with h5. So it can be a helpful move. But rook h8, and it still seems that bishop f8 is the best move. So definitely bishop f4. How do they play? We are threatening just to bring more pieces. Well, I'll show you that happened in the game. For example, rook h8, rook d1, and after rook h5, we can sacrifice on d7, play knight e6, take there, and then we have a full compensation. It's a knight plus 2 pawns to compensate the rook, but having in mind the enemy king's weakness, it should be fine. We should be winning. In the game, it was rook d1 played. That was a mistake. And now I want you to think and tell me how black punishes white for such a mistake and then either gets advantage or equalizes the position. Or b3, bishop b2 is a little slow. Instead, bishop f4. It brings your pieces quicker to the game, and you can bring the a rook at the very next move. But your b3 scenario takes 3 tempi to bring the rook to the game. Okay, so I'm waiting for your suggestions, guys. Thanks. Yes, I'm reading your comments. Don't just let more people to think and come up with their solution. Arush thinks it's f4. How does f4 work? So f4, bishop f4. No, I don't think it works. But you're on the right way. F4 can be a part of a combination. So let me show you. So here, black has material advantage. They have a piece for 2 pawns. No, they have a piece for a pawn. And that means that they can still sacrifice. Well, 95. 95 looks interesting, but I think it fails. Well, I think you can take on e6, you can take there and then take there. So actually after 96, which move you have to play? You cannot play this because of that. Oh, there is knight g4, so 96 fails. Okay, then queen e5. And what's then? Not clear. So it's bishop f2. How does it work? Such a move wasn't played in the game, but it really works. So they have to capture with the king or the queen because this is a fork. If the king captures, it's queen c5. How to play? If king f1, it's bishop a6. So king e1. But then it's queen e5 and the queens are exchanged. And then the position is favorable for black because after the exchange of the queens, they are a pawn up. They are likely to lose it after 96, but if that happens, it's a problem with this. Actually, I don't think rook e8 can be played. Maybe rook f6, because rook e8 there is a fork. So rook f6. And black is okay. Well, here you may tell me, well, Victor, what's the purpose of um, moving the king if we can block with the bishop or we can block with the queen? Well, unfortunately, both options are bad. So f4, and now the queen takes, knight takes, and it's materially equal position. And without queens, the king on g6 is not in danger. But what about the bishop move? What do you think? How black should continue here? F4, right? F4, sacrificing their queen but threatening the enemy queen. And there is no knight move because f takes g3 is a check. So bishop c5, f takes g3, knight c5, and white is piece down in the endgame. Well, they don't have anything else. It's f takes e3 or even queen takes e3. Fine. So, and if the queen takes, it's just 95. And this king gets more freedom. For example, it can move there. So, for example, this f4, bishop takes f4, exchange sacrifice. And if they take, it's queen g5. So, if knight goes back with the tempo, this fails because of 95. But king f5 works. So, it looks like the king's position is compromised, but at the same time, there is no scenario which allows white to succeed. Maybe this, but then it's this. I would probably choose to play this position for white, but it seems to me that with queen g5, they are able to escape and it looks okay. So bishop f2, and it was actually possible to calculate it. In the game, they played rook a d8, and now a disaster happens. So bishop c5 after queen takes f2. What do you mean? Queen takes queen c5 check after queen takes f2. Well, to be honest, I don't know. Let me see. The game was played in 1930, and William Winter is actually a famous player. Carl Oscar Ahues? I have no idea who is this guy. Actually, he has a Spanish name, so it's probably Carl Oscar Ahues. And well, I don't know who was William Winter, but he was strong enough and he could definitely calculate it. Doesn't 96 work in this position after rook d8? No, it doesn't. So this is actually what was played in the game, but this time it does work. Why does it work? Because you can take on d8 and then play bishop g5. Yeah, this is exactly what happened. In the previous position, 96 didn't work. Because what did you get? So king h7, f7, what is better? f7. If you take there, it's queen king e6. So you have to take there. But then he takes with the king, and the king is relatively safe. But after rook a d8, it works okay. So you take there. And, well, if they take with the queen, it's e6, taking advantage of the pin. If they take with a rook, it's bishop g5. Well, still bishop f2 is possible, but this time such a move doesn't work well. Why? King f2. Well, if queen f2, it's queen g5, and black is okay. But king f2, and there is no f4. So, for example, queen c5, queen e3, and it's time to give up. So, take, rook moves, rook takes d7. So what does it mean? They probably have to play 95, sacrifice there, but it's completely losing. This is how the game ended. Let's go back to the very beginning of the game. So this e5 and bishop h7 worked, but it should be well calculated, and you should realize that this queen maneuver, is the best way to practically take advantage of the king's position on g6. However, you see knight d7 is a kind of a mistake or inaccuracy according to Lichess. What do you think? Which move was a better move for black in this position and could probably avoid issues? Bishop takes f2? Ah, okay. Bishop takes f3, according to Brian. Okay, bishop takes f3. Yeah, it should be bishop takes f3 intermediate move, but even this move doesn't work so well. What's wrong with this move? So queen takes f3. Where the knight goes? Well, d7 is an option and d5. But in both cases, so it doesn't matter. In both cases, it's queen e4. And how they should play in this position. It seems that f5 is the best way, but if f5 is played, it takes f6. Knight takes to defend h7, and they lose a pawn. For some initiative, of course, but it's still the whole pawn. Knight d7 makes no difference. They still have to react with f5 and lose on e6. What about g6, by the way? Isn't it better? At least they don't lose anything. How would you continue? h4, h5, possible, but a little slow. Well, definitely this should be the first move. The question is how to continue after rook e8. Yes, thanks, Zamfir. You're absolutely right. It's bishop b5, so the rook is trapped. So in case of g6, they even lose more material than just the pawn on e6. So that's why f5 is a must. Oh, actually, wait a sec. Maybe this, and then g6. Maybe this is better. So now when you play this move, they go that way. What's your opinion? Is it better for black, or doing f5 was better? Still bishop b5, exactly. Till bishop b5, and then you take advantage of the pin. So actually with this rook, they are totally pinned because, well, let's say queen tries to go to c7, rook ac1, for example. Yeah, rook ac1, and now you threaten even with bishop a3. Maybe queen e7. Queen e7 you can threaten with this move. They, let's say, defend. Rook ac1, so you threaten to exchange on d7. No. Okay, well, you threaten the bishop. Well, yeah, you do threaten the bishop. That's right. So bishop b6. Just something like that, maybe, with bishop g5 at the very next move. So it's a problematic position. It's good to have an escape square. Yes. So h4 with h5 idea. This time I don't care about the fact that they have a light squared bishop, dark squared bishop, because I have a pawn on e5 and it stops bishop c7, so they cannot really cover my escape square. Okay, fine. So we are almost done. So we have one more example that I would like to talk about. Mm, However, again, if you guys enjoy my webinars and you want to donate, there is a link that you can use to donate using PayPal. So let me send you the link. I would appreciate any help. It would be great if you also purchase my courses or you recommend my webinars, workshops, courses, any events to your friends. So how it works, you just click this button, donate, and enter the amount you want to donate, any amount. Then you click on the PayPal button and you are redirected to your PayPal account. You have to log in and then send a transfer to me. So thank you very much for help and well, for attending these webinars as well. What else? I kindly recommend you to join the Chesslands Club. There will be a new tournament on Thursday. There will be a stream on that title Tuesday. So I'm going to do it on Twitch. So do not miss. But if you are already in the mailing list, it's fine. So you see there are yeah, there are two title Tuesdays and Can Sicilian Rapid Arena. So you can also subscribe um, to not miss new streams. Fine. And an announcement regarding a new group lesson course will be published soon, probably next week. So let's continue with our last example. Well, this is the position where, again, we have material advantage. We have a pawn on e5 already. However, their pawn cover looks still solid, and but we should still find a way of how to win in this position. What do you think White should start with? They definitely dominate in the game. Well, their c4 pawn is hanging. Maybe it's not a big issue, but let's decide. Is there an attack? And if yes, then how exactly we can improve our position? It's an English opening. No, I think it's was Catalan, I think. It seems to be Catalan. The bishop, well, maybe it was English. I don't remember. Well, definitely knight f6 is the move that we should consider. Why knight f6? Well, because this move ruins the enemy pawn structure. They can, of course, continue with king h8, but this allows us to add pressure on h7 by bringing the queen to d3 or queen to h5. So Brian is calculating f4. I would say if there was no knight f6, you could consider f4, but f4 b takes c4. And what did you achieve? If you want to push f5, they'll take it and set their knight on e6. And this knight on e6 will help to cement the king side. Well, two moves to consider here are queen g4 and knight f6, and probably they are equal because they lead to the same position. So knight f6 is definitely the first candidate move because it's also a check. h4 again seems to be quite slow. So knight f6, let's make this move on the board. They cannot take it. So they definitely should take, but what happens if they don't take? Well, queen d3, g6, or queen d3, they take. At every move, we should calculate g takes f6. This time, actually, queen h5 looks like as a good suggestion. Why? Well, if they play h6, then we can liquidate the h6 pawn by doing bishop c1. So, for example, they take with the bishop, or they take, well, if they take with the pawn, it's game over. We are threatening with the discovered attack. And if they move their rook away, it's still completely losing. For example, this move, and then bishop g7, queen h8. So if they take, then it's bishop g5 first, and then we take there and checkmate on h8. So if this, it's this. If this, it's bishop takes f6 and queen h8. Well, bishop f8 can be played, for example, in this position. Then bishop f8 is a mate. So maybe they take with a bishop, but it still fails. You can take that, undermining this. Look, material is still equal. And then after they lose on g7, we take on h6. And this is where we can consider how to increase our position, how to improve our position and increase pressure slowly, because material is equal. So queen h5, bishop c1, and he's in trouble. That's why they have to take. Which piece to take? Well, taking with the pawn is logical, and this is the first line to consider. But after queen g4, king moves, and this, you are threatening with two threats, and both are mating threats. Queen g7 and f takes e7. And if rook g8, f takes e7 leads to checkmate. They can block, but it doesn't make sense. You can take everything with your bishop and finally with your queen. So it fails completely. That's why if they want to take, they should take with the bishop. Bishop takes f6. Pawn takes. Material is equal. And you're about to take there. If they take here, it's an easy win. So it actually tells us that they have to play either g6, and if so, well, I don't think that queen c1 wins the game. Queen c1, rook d8. Well, they can actually start with this move. And if you play queen c1, they play g6, you bring the queen there, and they play knight e8. So they are defending in time. And the main problem is that we cannot get rid of this knight. But at the same time, we can declare that this position is favorable for white because the knight is tied down and we can use our piece's activity. So here I would probably consider doing something like rook c1, rook d1, or c5, or f4 actually. Yeah, it's tough to defend. Well, in the game, it was queen g4, and they reacted with g6. So there is no need to bring the queen and to h6 and spend two tempo on it if then you see that knight e8 works and successfully defends against this. Instead, just play slowly. Why? Because it's equal material. So rook c1. Well, h4, yes, but let's first defend there, and we create a threat of doing this move. And if they take, this is a weakness. So probably queen b7. Then, yes, you can play h4. And then h5. Try to weaken there. Not sure if it's the very best way. Maybe you also can consider this and create an outpost on d6 because bringing the knight to d5 means that the knight is too far from g7 and queen g5 and queen h6 could make sense. So for example, let's start with queen f4. How do they play? If they take, then well, then you take, he goes that way, and then there will be a pressure on c6, and also this idea. While rook h4 actually looks stronger. But, well, if we can do a rook lift, we're definitely winning. Well, the game continued. I don't know how, but it's obvious that white is much, much better in this position. So you see, even if you don't succeed with the attack, you can get a favorable position and just step by step slowly increase your advantage based on the fact that the enemy king's position is compromised and his king's pawn cover is weakened. So here, for example, you always have an idea to attack through the h file with your queen on h6 and your rook on h4. Or maybe you push the h pawn and bring the rook to h1 instead. Or maybe you just keep your queen somewhere in the center with some ideas of queen h6, but other of your pieces are attacking the weaknesses on the C or D file. Fine. So we are done for today. I think today's webinar workshop was really helpful. You learned a lot about the pawn covers, which pawn cover is strong, which is weak, and how to weaken the enemy king's pawn cover in order to somehow exploit it. We even did talk about the Greek gift sacrifice. Do you have any specific questions regarding the topic or just in general? If well, if you're looking for private coaching, you can message me at tricksofchess@gmail.com. You can also suggest the topics for our future workshops, as well as the opening to work on, to organize a chess.com tournament about. So there are suggestions. Well, there is Johnny suggested Bianco Gambit. Am I right? Or was it something else? Nimza Indian and Rui Lopez. So these are suggestions. I didn't decide yet. Maybe I will instead do Grunfeld for black. Well, Grunfeld for black is quite solid. Or maybe we will play Scandinavian for white.
Hey, Victor, when you set those tournaments, I think the last one was like a Tuesday morning or something. Would there be a chance of doing it like later in the day or something? No, it was the time was very, I was at work at that time. I couldn't really do it.
So we are doing tournaments on Thursdays. And what time would work for you then?
Well, I think like the time of the class, like, 4 in the afternoon or something is a better,
Uh-huh,
you have a
uh-huh.
better chance to do it. But if that's not good for anyone else, that's fine. I just, that time was not good for me, but.
I don't know. Maybe it's okay. Maybe it even works better. Well, I made it. I organized in the morning because in the morning I was available. So that's the reason. But let me think. Maybe this upcoming week I will be able in the afternoon too, and I can do it in the afternoon. So let me see. So yeah, I'll try to do it later. I will send an announcement on Wednesday, but there will be also an announcement of the webinar, which I probably have to send on Tuesday. Okay, so fine. Yeah, I'll try to do it later. I don't think there were a lot of Europeans. Okay, is there anything else you want to share? If not, okay. Yeah, so on Tuesday, I will be playing in the title Tuesday on chess.com, and I have to set my computer and install their anti-cheating program, which is called Proctor. I will work on it on Monday to be ready for the streaming on Tuesday. There will be probably some issues with the stream, but it seems that there is a solution how to stream. I also have two cameras, so I can use one for Proctor and the other one for streaming. Thanks for joining and hope to see you on. Mm. Okay, thanks, Brian. Yeah, thanks for joining and hope to see everyone at least next Sunday at our next workshop. Thank you for coming.
Have a great day.